All right. So, this is a bit of a follow-up on the tail end of, the whole Drizzy with the fizzy, Drizzy with the hizzy, whatever you want to call it, situation. Because I've described this earlier where you gotta know how to dissect things that you see in the media. Propaganda, when people are trying to push agendas and stuff, right? Well, I think it's about time to talk about something real quick. Let's get into it. Okay, so as you all are probably aware, the pandemic has been doing numbers on a lot of people, most people, you know, and this contagion that has been moving around the cocoa,
I'm in love with the coco.
it has been taking over, it has been dominating everything, you know. Of course, there's some manipulation. The stock markets are doing their thing, even though, they might eventually crash. But one of the people who have been suffering the most are, of course, those at the bottom. And whom are those at the bottom? Well, they tend to be single moms. And the single moms that are at the bottom, this pandemic has been absolutely ravishing them. Because they're in an unfavorable position. Yes, some of them made the choices they made to be where they are, and they expect the government to step in and help. This has always been the narrative. But the pandemic,
Finish him.
it was about to finish them. And big old government was like, "Oh, we got to keep pushing this narrative. We can't let these single mothers, of course I'm talking about in general black women, because those black women are the face of single motherhood, and we already know the dynamic between black men and women, and the family situation over there. So of course, greater society, and was like, the government was like, oh no, we can't let our biggest social experiment fail.
Nope.
We can't do that. We gotta step in and help them. We gotta save them. We can't let them fail. And that's exactly what's going on here. Now, I do want to point out some things though. However, you know, because no matter how bad the cocoa has been,
I'm in love with the coco.
no matter how bad it's been, there's been a lot of assistance towards one specific demographic, that demographic being black women. Sometimes they might refer to women in color, but specifically in this case, they're literally saying yes, black women. They're not even playing around with the word jargon no more. They're not even saying of color. They're saying no, we need to help these black women because we cannot let them fail, because otherwise that'll prove everything that we've been trying to prove, that women can get out here and dominate and do things. It's going to prove all that crap wrong. So, what's one solution? Universal basic income. And this is something they've been toying around for years. And I do want to point out something. I want you to, this is how I know this is a bit of propaganda, because this isn't just the government that is actually doing these programs. What it is it's actually privately funded programs throughout all over the country. This one in general, uh, this is what one was up in New York. There's one that I'm going to actually dive into a bit that was actually based in, I believe, Mississippi. And then that one, I'm actually going to dive into why some of these folks is getting to the bag. I'm going to dive into it. You know, did a little digging here. So, of course, I'm going to link all these articles. Of course, this is one talking about the moms up in New York, talking about the women of color and the black women. So got to have the sad photo up here because that's what sells things. Oh, I'm a single mom and it's so hard out here for me and the world is so difficult. Most of them chose the life that they chose. Most of them. I mean, we live in an era where birth control, I mean, in most cases, correct me if I'm wrong, but in most cases, if I'm not wrong, I do recall that birth control is free. I know you got to pay for condoms, but I mean, in general, like birth control, like you can get like immigrant women that come over here, they literally give them one of those injected birth control. I know because she showed it to me. It's in her arm. So they literally give them the birth control just to make sure they don't give birth while they're in the country, with the visa or whatever. So yes, birth control is very accessible. There's a variety. Like it doesn't matter what your issue is. There's a variety of them. Some of them are the ones with, like what my wife has. It's the one that doesn't have the hormonal stuff component to it. It's the one they put up in you. But yeah, there's too many different types of birth control. So this is talking about one group up in New York, and of course that was the New York Times. I'm linking all these articles. Then this one was from the Sun. Now notice the imagery. Of course, they're all black women or women of color that they're focusing on here. So notice the imagery. Hundreds of more moms get monthly $1,000 payments as child tax credits end. So mind you, they were doing all this, the tax credit benefits, they were giving additional stimulus to those with children, all that stuff throughout the pandemic, trying to keep them afloat. Because it has been made very clear that single motherhood is not the way to go. They fail every they fail in just about every demographic that matters compared to other children. And you can go through this and read this, but I'm not even focusing on these because I just want to do these just let you know that yes, in most cases these are actually of course this is talking about the same thing, but they're independent. This is another. It's called the Marshall Plan for Moms. Now this is where they actually looking to implement stuff into Congress. So now they're getting the government involved, of course. Because prior to, as I'm about to go into, they were independent, companies doing kind of like little research groups and stuff, trying to see if this is viable. Now, these are the women, of course, and famous celebrities and whatever that back it, of course, they're all women. uh, of course, we just knew Gabrielle Union was going to be here, but I'm going to link this too. Of course, this one says, "We are in a moment of rage inside the movement to win basic income for moms." Yes, yes, yes. And of course, she talks about, giving the same sad story. Single moms out here struggling and yada, yada, yada. Cool. Now, let me get into the juicy. Now, this is the one that I just, I was just seeing this too much, and I was just like, let me do some thinking because I have two different narratives on why. Of course, notice the imagery, of course, again, the black woman, but I was like, let me do a little diving because I can only see really two different reasons why this is so relevant. On the one end, there is the propaganda, they gotta make women seem more, they gotta equal the playing field out. They can't let these women whom have on record been known to be part of not just a matriarchal, form of family, of how they run the family, like, the gynocracy, the sisterhood. But it's like, okay, they're pretty much like the guinea pigs. When I'm talking about like black women in general, because most of the families are single mother, household led. So it's like, okay, well, what happens when women lead the household? Well, this is what you get. And then of course we're towards the bottom. Only ones under us are illegal immigrants, but that's not much to say about that. But yes, they're at the bottom. So it's not working out. And actually, one of the stories with the lady here, she there's a oh let me wind back a little bit. So this is actually pertaining to an article. This article is talking about an independent company again, not a nonprofit that has been running this study with black mothers in Mississippi since about 2014. or 2019 or roughly, because the company was started in 2014, and then the lady that they brought on, whom is the face of the whole thing, a black woman, of course, she came on in roughly about 2016 or 19. I think it was 19. I got it up here, so we're gonna get into it. So, of course, they dive into the thing. So in the US, 30% of families headed by black mothers live below the poverty line. Now, I do want to say one thing. This term black mothers, it does not just mean the ADOS African American, descendants of slaves, black women. No. This means black, meaning those that come from the islands, those that come from Africa, those that come from outside the states. From what I've known, especially the ones that come from poverty, which of course, usually the ones that come from the islands and come from some certain areas in Africa, they exhibit the exact same behaviors of single motherhood. In fact, I was literally just listening to a woman who was talking about how her mother came from Haiti, came over here, blew out three babies by three different dudes, living on the benefits, etc., etc. And then she followed fairly closely right behind her as a single mother of her own, but she only had like one baby. So at least she was like, I ain't gonna have three by three. I'm just gonna do the one by one, you know. But yeah, came from Haiti. And from what I hear, where they're doing this program up in New York, what I've heard, well, not this program, but the program prior in New York, what I've heard in New York is certain areas in New York, if not the majority of the black people up in New York, are actually immigrants. They're not actually ADOS. They're not actually like from America. They're like from Haiti and all these other places. Because they drop these people off in predominantly black neighborhoods and stuff. That's where they put the immigrants because they kind of want to, flood the area with immigrants. And then they just label them black. And then this is what contributes to the black. So when you see this term black mothers, they're not just talking about, African American and ADOS. They're talking about all of y'all. So it says 30% of the families headed by black mothers live below the poverty line. That's no big surprise. So now they're talking about the trust that they've developed, which gives out the $1,000 a month payments. But they're only giving it to about 100 working black moms in Jackson. This is in Mississippi. And they're doing this as a study, but I do want to make some remarks here. In this case, they're only doing it with 100 people. Now, if you're not aware, and for example, in school, some of the best classes you can get into are those with a good teacher to student ratio, because the fewer students you have, the more time or one-on-one time that the teacher can dedicate towards the students, right? So in this case, of course, she actually talks about it when I dive into this, you'll see who the woman is, and she dives into it, and she's saying like they actually hold the hand of the women through this process. So they didn't just give them the $1,000; they actually held their hand through the process and helped them make the most out of the payments they were doing, like to get in certain school programs. In some cases, help them get other benefits and assistance and all that other stuff. So mind you, this isn't just them giving the $1,000. However, remember what I say, like when I said earlier about propaganda as well as studies like this, where in order to make it look better, they'll skew the results somehow, some way. So in some cases, they might skew the results by only looking at the results of the 100 best participants. Like they might have had 150, but they only really recorded 100 of the 100 best. And in addition to that, because there's so few in this, little independent study, which they have total control over, they're holding the hand of these women and helping them out outside of just the $1,000 payment. Meaning they're giving these women counseling, all this stuff to help better education, all this stuff, helping set up everything. This is drastically different than the universal basic income that is being proposed. Because in this plan, I don't recall them saying, they're going to do all that extra stuff, which cost money, which cost even more money than just the $1,000 payments. Mind you that. So this study, although they might use it to support the universal basic income, I do want to make note that they did hold the hand of the women in the study, and there's only 100 women that they either did the study with or chose to record the results of to show how they bettered their life. This is drastically different than just giving $1,000 to a million single moms and then giving them none of the same, coaching or counseling, etc. Drastically different here. So I just wanted to make note of that. But of course, in this study, so they can get the best results, that's exactly what they did. They held the hands of the moms through the test. This was going on since at least 2019. Like I said, the company was started in 14, and I'm going to get into why there's a discrepancy there. And of course, they kind of asked the lady. Her name's Aisha. It's Aisha, not
LaQuisha.
Yeah.
LaQuisha.
Yeah.
oh, not LaQuisha. It's Aisha. Okay, so Aisha, not
LaQuisha.
Yeah.
and I don't even know Nyandoros. Nyandoro. Forget the S. I'm guessing that's what her name is. Potentially sounds like a name that might have come from outside of America. So remember what I said earlier. They just as bad. Now, I I did a little bit of digging into here because I was like, you know what? The two different narratives I can see here are those pushing the agenda. You know, they need to help the women out. Shout out to the femmes. They need this to work out because they need to be able to prove their point that women can do it just like the men. And or those just trying to get to the bag. Those trying to make money from this. Because I already know what the game. I'm aware of the real estate game when it comes to Section 8 housing. There's a whole. I mean, there's courses teaching this how to build your real estate portfolio for Section 8 housing. Because it's a legit process because even though the property value might decline or it's in a low value area, the rent's guaranteed by the government because it's Section 8 housing. So you don't have to worry about your tenants, you know, not paying the rent. No, the rent's guaranteed. That's what makes it so lucrative. Keep that in mind for later. Now, the company, um, what it's supposed to, what is typical is springboard to opportunities. This is what the company is. She is named as Aisha. Is named as chief executive officer. Here we go. Of course, you got all of them are women. Everyone here is a woman, of course. And keep that in mind here, because this is supposedly the face of what is doing this program, right? The program that's funding the Magnolia's Mothers Trust. This is supposed to be the program, right? And from I think this site you can go to. This is Aisha. She's giving a little like a TED Talk thing. Society flourishes when we invest in our most vulnerable. I somewhat disagree with that because the means see this is where propaganda comes in because it sounds politically correct, but technically what they're really trying to do on the mass scale, through the government pushing the incentive programs is they're pretty much just trying to give a bunch of money to single moms virtually for free without any real counseling and all that other stuff because all that extra stuff costs a lot of money too. Now they might give a little something extra, you know, a little more something on top of the $1,000, but I doubt they're going to do anything like what this program did to literally hold the hands of these women that went through this program to better their lives. I seriously doubt that. Because mind you, they only worked with 100 women, you know, annually on this program. And they were able to pour because it was millions of dollars they had. So they're able to, you know, they were able to put resources in to make sure that they bettered their lives. and their studies turned out to look so great and grand, right? So the way that they mean it, we when we invest in our most vulnerable, I mean, I believe the children, yes. If it were up to me, I would do something to help the children. And if I'm just being honest, I'd make it so just like a man that can't take care of his kids is labeled a bum, deadbeat, etc., and he's locked up if he can't take care of his kids financially, I believe the same should happen to a woman. If she can't take care of her kids financially, she chooses single motherhood. I don't think Big Daddy government should step in and then put all the pressure on the father, and society put all the pressure on the father, shaming the father for not being able to or willing to stick with the woman who chose to get pregnant, whether or not they did have sex. Because mind you, we are a society of beings whom have evolved, whom have sex for pleasure. We don't just have sex to procreate. Now, I myself do say that every woman you deal with is a risk for this specific reason, as we found out with Drizzy and his situation. You remember that? Yeah, when trapping goes wrong. So, yes, we found out through that. Yes, women absolutely will and do try to trap the guys, especially the ones at the top. Yes, you a target. You got a big old bullseye on you. It is what it is. That's part of the game. Now, let's get back into it. Now, I decided to look into this. Oh, and on top of this, yes, this is also in crypto. This is something I found too. They're looking at universal basic income. Of course, notice the imagery here again. Woman of color. So, if you want to check that out, I might show that up. But I decided to dive into it. I like to use open corporates and other platforms to kind of look into let me look into the company, see how it's structured, right? So I look into it. I'm like, okay, Springboard to opportunities. Well, here's why I said, it started in 2014. That's when it was incorporated. And then it says between here and here, she was added as an agent. And then she was added as a director. So now I'm like, okay, so if you watch the video, she says her company, right? Which she is the chief executive officer. But there's a difference between the CEO, chief executive officer, and the founder or the person that actually started the company. So remember what I said, the two different reasons why this company might start is because either it's, one side people trying to push an agenda for the films, or the other side people trying to get to the bag and make some money off of it. Because I do know some of the game where people do use their businesses to reap the benefits of government fundings, i.e., Section 8 housing, guaranteed rental payments. All you got to do is come up with the units. Keep that in mind for later. So, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Let me look a little more into the company. So then I look into the company and come to find out it's a subsidiary of the real Springboard to Opportunities that is based in Maine. And this is the guy that actually started it. And if you notice here, guess what he's in? He's a real estate mogul, looks like. Real estate. Remember what I said about the real estate game. Low income housing. Section 8. The Section 8 hustle. Remember what I said there. Get into the bag. Now, I thought this was interesting because, if you go back to the company structure, go back here. Let me see if I can go back to the company. I'm going to try and go back to the company real quick. If my internet will allow me. Okay, what's going on here? What are you doing, baby? This bro real slow. Okay, so here we go. So, as you know, it's a branch. Now, the branch, the one that's based out of Mississippi, which is where the actual story was from, it's a branch of the one that's actually founded in Maine. So it's a branch. So no, she's not even the CEO of the Maine. She's the CEO of the branch that is used to put her as the face of it to get the job done. And I know this because I actually talked to a real estate developer. He owns his own contracting company, and he let me onto some game, which I was already aware of. I'm already aware of race and the issues of race and all that stuff, right? So me being me, I just asked some questions about, because I live in Charlotte, and it's been getting gentrified for the past decade, right? I went into college, it looked one way. I came out of college, went by mama's house to check it out. Completely different. Completely different. I'm talking about, went from habitat housing, one story, 1,200, 1,400 square foot homes to like we got three-story, 3,000 square foot houses. Completely different. Developers all up and down that street, right? Hot market. Now, so the developer, I mentioned the zip code of my mom's, and he was like, and I could see the gleam in his eyes because that was one of the areas that he knows is hot. And this was about 4 or 5 years ago, right? Actually, hold on. This is 2019, early 2019, I believe it was. Yeah, it was either early 2019 or like January 2020 before the everything, shut down, right? So it was actually 2, maybe 3 years ago, right? And he was Hispanic, right? He could pass for white though. But, he let me know a little bit about himself, his background, everything. He wasn't he was like I was from so and so. But he was Hispanic. He's not but he could pass for white, right? And and when I say he could pass for white, like I can kind of tell he wasn't like all, I could tell he was a bit Hispanic. That's why even though there are white Hispanic people and black Hispanic people, but the reason why I said that is because I could tell visibly he wasn't white, but he could pass for white. So and he let me on some game. He owned his own construction company and he was getting into real estate, which is why we were at this event, you know, to learn a bit more about the real estate investing, right? And he was saying he was trying to scale up his thing because at the time he was only able to do like 3 or 4 companies, 3 or 4 houses a year. And he was trying to scale it up to like the double digits, right? Like any other savvy entrepreneur. Because he already owned his own contracting company, so he would literally do the work himself, like with him and his constituents. But the thing was, when I talked to him, he let me in on some game. He was like, "Yeah, well, in a neighborhood like that," he was referring to my mom's neighborhood, which was majority black prior to where it is now, where it's been gentrified successfully, fairly successfully, right? All the neighbors have sold their house pretty much. My mom and only a handful of others were able to hold on because they aren't struggling like everybody else was. But man, my mom's house property value did a damn crypto 10x, man. Like I kid you not, that thing flipped over the last 5 years. But let me get back into it. So he was letting me know, like, yeah, like a neighborhood like my mom's, I would do better than he would. And the reason why he said that is because and he said this literally. He was like, because people tend to sell their home to certain people, i.e., it was a majority black neighborhood. Therefore, I would be able to get more people willing to sell their houses to me because I'm black versus him because he's Hispanic and white looking. And then he's telling me the same vice versa. And he was like, well, and if I go to this area, which was predominantly white, he'd do better than in that area because he could pass for white. And mind you, this is a guy who's been, he's been working on homes for decades. I think he might have been like 40 going on 50. He was still, still successful. He was just trying to scale up what he was doing at the time. And he was like, yeah, race definitely plays a part in it. And I was like, you know what? Thanks for at least being honest about it. Because, there's a lot of people out here who lie about it and be like, oh, no, it ain't that important. I'm like, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, please stop with the BS. And he was like, yes, race absolutely plays a part in it. I've been in this business long enough to know that. And I was like, you know what? Thanks for being honest. I linked up with him, got his info. I actually contacted him about an opportunity in my neighborhood. But yes, outside of that. So yes, the real estate game is there. I get the Section 8 housing, the booming. I get it, right? Race does play a part. Okay. Now back into the story. So her being the face of this as a black woman, we already know who that's going to favor, and it's going to make it's of course and you know what? I'm just now thinking about this. I'm wondering if they're able to qualify for certain funding because if you're not aware, it is easier for you to qualify for certain business funding and grants if you're black female owned. So now I'm trying to figure out, I wonder if they're getting some of that funding now. Hmm. And I just thought I wouldn't even think about that. See, I got so much other stuff, I wasn't even thinking about that. But let's get back into it. So she is the CEO of the branch of the Springboard to Opportunities, the one that's based out of Maine, not Mississippi, where she's at. And this is the guy that actually does it. Now, I was like, this is interesting. So he's starting to fit the narrative. Real estate. He is a real estate mogul, it seems, right? He's able to fund this business. Not sure if he's getting grants and stuff, mind you that. But at least he's got some money, right? So I'm looking up. Let me look this guy up. Here he is, and what do we see here? Lyndall J. Joe Wishcamper has a long and distinguished career in affordable housing. Ding, 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 ding. I swear, man. If if I was that's the wrong sound effect. But if I was playing a game and like a guessing game, man, like seriously, man, like, your boy would be on point. I kid you not. I'd be on point with this. Um, having entered the industry in 1970, so oh my gosh. So mind you this, he might have been one of the first ones to really get in on this because mind you, like, the welfare narrative and everything was being pushed around the same time he was getting into it. It would only make sense that because he's been in the affordable housing game, it's on his website, that he probably was one of the first people to realize the hustle with Section 8 housing. He has been an owner developer of over 15,000 units of affordable housing throughout the country. Your boy's making bank. He get into the bag. So there's incentive on him to do this research. And I just want you guys to notice this because mind you, the real estate game with this, when it comes to the welfare, yes, it was very heavily, back then when they're doing the welfare and stuff, single moms, and very heavily favored by black women, as we know. So it only makes sense that he would be like, hey, let me get in on more of this game. Let me get a black woman to face the branch of my company. And then let's do some research and see if we can push this thing. Because mind you, I'm pretty sure he came out of pocket to help do the research, right? Because they talk about, it's independently owned. It's a non for profit. They might have had government funding because, like I said, they did have a black female as a CEO. So maybe they worked some magic with the on the books with that. But at the same time, he was like, "Let me do some research. Let's try to push this narrative to get universal basic income." And people probably don't aren't even thinking about this, but it's like, where do you think these women are going to spend the money at? Like, where do you think they're going to spend the money at? Because now I'm really getting to looking into some stuff. And these are other guys, part of his some of his constituents, part of his company, right? Got a doctorate from Boston College Law. He's been a private held of real estate and stuff. He might be into the game too, but he probably got a more extensive portfolio outside of just affordable housing, right? Really, Section 8 housing, really. That's what they should call it. He says, see, these are the people, not a black face in sight, right? But where do you think these people are going to spend the money? Because it's only natural. Okay, if I'm going to get into the housing game, well, where are these people? And this is just the business mindset. So where are these people going to shop? Where are they going to get their groceries? So look at some of these stores in the lower income areas. So in addition to supplying the housing, the Section 8 housing that I'm getting on a regular basis from the government, I would also own some of the if I can franchise it, some of the stores that you often see in low income areas. And we already know that does not mean two of the most prominent ones. Like when you know something's about to get gentrified, first comes the Starbucks and then finally comes the Whole Foods. So I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about like the Dollar Trees and Dollar Generals and that kind of stuff. Those little dollar stores and stuff. The little the little corner stores and stuff like that. If I really want to get to the bag, because mind you, they're in addition to the Section 8 housing, they also get the food stamps or WIC, which they can only spend in certain areas. So I'd make sure I'd own the grocery stores or the branches of the grocery stores in the area of the low income areas because they got to spend that somewhere. And then on top of that, what more incentive for these women to get that extra $1,000 than to own those stores in the areas they live? And now they're going to spend even more money in my stores. You peep the game. Last but not least, I wanted to look. I wanted you guys to guess, but I took a little too late. I already did it. Now it's already out there. Yes, Aisha getting to the bag herself. Aisha's getting to the bag herself. She making over six figures. She's in Mississippi, which, mind you, I, I think that is like one of the poorest states in the union. She making over six figures, people, in Mississippi. In Mississippi, she living good out there. Cause like this would be like maybe 200 over here in North Carolina, maybe 300 to 400, somewhere like Cali or New York. I'm not sure how drastically different the cost of you have to adjust for the cost of living. So if this is like the poor side of the state, I mean, 100K is even good where I'm at, which is North Carolina. That's decent. That's fairly good over here, right? For a single income. But it's about 300 to 400 somewhere like New York or Cali, possibly. Adjusting for the cost of living. So yes, Aisha, she is definitely getting to the bag because they got to keep them well paid. Now, some of these people are placeholders because what I know, similar to what I did with the research on the BLM situation, which is not a not-for-profit. It's not a not-for-profit, so you can't even see how much money them black women was making. However, the not-for-profit that actually helped organize BLM, you could see their income. Them ladies, all of them are white, of course. All the women was making over 200K, and then they had some random dude, and he was docked at zero. I guess he was just helping around with the paperwork. But they'll selectively pay people on the books, like Miss Aisha, and then they'll have people there that might just be helping out behind the scenes or something, and they might be, just there from another company or something, and they don't get paid on the books for the not-for-profit. So that's why their things is zero. But yeah, I was like, you know what? This is crazy. And if I were to look into, Mr. Wishcamper's portfolio, it probably would be very much like what I said, you know, where he absolutely owns some of the stores in the area, and these women are paying to go, shop at his stores. It only makes sense. Because from a business perspective, if I own the housing where you live at, I'm going to want to own the stores you shop at because I'm getting the guaranteed government money by going to, get supplying the housing, Section 8, the certificates and all that stuff, right? And then I also know you're getting benefits for food. Shoot, I wouldn't be surprised if he's also invested in the local community college. I know you're getting money to also go to school. You see, you peep the game, people, because I know people absolutely take advantage of situations like this where they're able to get their income directly from the government through these benefit programs and incentive programs, right? I'm very well aware of this. Military contracting. There's a lot of companies out there where they only bid for military contracts, government money. Like when a government passes something and to work on a bridge or something, who do you think they hire? They have incentive. There's a whole website where you can literally bid for federal government jobs. The government's like, hey, I need 1,000 iPads. You get on that site and you can bid with other business owners to supply the iPads for a certain price. Or just recently, we just had a storm come through the winter, and one of the things with trucking that I'm aware of is icing the roads, de-icing the roads, laying salt. I'm seeing dudes come from the mountains and stuff here in North Carolina with their trucks, their pickup trucks with the little rigs fixed on the back, and then the shovels, well, it's not a shovel, but the dump truck pushers on the front with their pickup trucks, like a Chevy Silverado and stuff. They worked on it, and that's their company. They go around, and the local governments or whatever, hires them to clear the roads because the governments don't hire these people themselves. For the most part, they have to outsource it. They put the contracts out there. Hey, we need somebody with trucks to help do this project, and then people bid for the projects. Now, when it comes to the Section 8 housing game, I'm aware that there is a process you got to go through to qualify. I haven't been told it was hard or difficult, but you do have to go through a certain process to qualify for it, right? And then once you qualify, it's easy money. It's all you got to do is just maintain the housing, and the money's going to continue to come. The property is hella cheap already. You're just making cash flow off the housing voucher that comes from the government. But I thought I'd just share this story, just to go on top of the Drizzy situation and why, although they are failing, which yes, this method, the single motherhood method, this method is failing. Thus, why they need incentive programs like this. Thus, why you need companies literally pouring billions of dollars into women in general, specifically black women, to try to get them up to par because they're way behind everybody else in income. What was it? I was watching something. They were talking about black women have the most educated. Now, this isn't this. I don't mean like they have the most degrees but the least income. Now, this isn't the whole most enrolled thing. No, they have the most degrees per capita but the least income. Which that defeats the narrative that higher education guarantees higher pay. No, that defeats that whole BS narrative because the one demographic that has the most degrees has is at the bottom when it comes to income. I just thought I'd throw that out there. So yes, and as in one of these videos, specifically this one, she says the no, not this one, the prior one, this one. She says the solution is universal basic income. Give these women just money. Just give them money. Really? Just think about that. These women are failing because of the choices they made. Absolutely failing because of the choices they made. And then once it turns out that their life is not like what they wanted,
Oh shit! Oh shit!
all of a sudden The solution is, oh well, let's just give them money. That sounds bright, right? Let's just give them money. That's definitely the solution. How is the problem being solved here? How is the problem being solved here? It isn't. It isn't. But you tell me, what do you think? Leave a comment below. And I will be linking all this stuff. And you can go read it for yourself. I didn't even read the first few articles. I just put that in there just to show you that it wasn't just this one company. If I were to dig into the other companies, I'm pretty sure it'd be much of the same. But hey, let me know what you think. And until next time, people.